Hi, everyone. This is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this month's live interview with a great investor agent I met out in the Philadelphia area this past spring, Howard Gottlieb. And Howard's in the Keller Williams Langhorne office, and that's, I believe, westerly and northerly of the great city of brotherly love. So welcome, Howard, welcome. And if you wouldn't mind, Howard, just to start off, would you mind telling everybody here a little bit about who you are? Who is Howard Gottlieb?
Yeah, I'm Howard Gottlieb, and I work at Keller Williams Langhorne, as Gary said. I've been here since 2004 when we opened the office. I've been selling real estate since 1986, almost 30 years, and I enjoy what I do and like getting people investments that will make them passive income.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate where you're coming from and what you do, Howard, because I do a little bit of the same thing. I've found a great home in the world of service to real estate investors because a lot of them don't feel like they can turn to most agents, because you just don't have the experience or the education or even the drive to help investors. So I appreciate the fact that you take the time to do that because it's a worthwhile endeavor and it's a great way to serve the community. So if you wouldn't mind, elaborate a little bit on that. Give us an idea, maybe paint a picture of your typical day or typical week. What is it that you do on a regular basis, to help these people?
Well, I generally follow the hot sheets and see what's listed, and if something comes up that matches one of my investors' needs, I'll email it to them and see if they want to go see it. I'm friendly with a bunch of the REO guys or the bank-owned property guys that list them. And they typically will, help me out or, give me hints of what's coming on the market. And I can pass that along to my investors so they can pick up a good deal before it even hits the market.
Awesome. Yeah, I used to do a lot of the same thing. As a matter of fact, I ended up selling so many REO properties over the years. When I signed up to be a member of the National REO Brokers Association, NRBA, I was voted in on the first vote of the first round, which is really unusual when you're voted in by your peers, people who are already members. And it turns out I had made so many agents and brokers so much money because they were listing agents for HUD and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all those guys. I made them a ton of money. And then, of course, Fannie Mae, HUD, they all started recognizing my name over and over again. And I started getting contracts with those guys. So I became a listing agent. Ended up actually not really liking it so much.
Yeah, I hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I just found it was easier just to work with the investors, work with the buyers, let the other guys deal with all the headaches of working with the big asset managers.
That's a lot of hassle. You got to cut lawns and shovel sidewalks and do a lot of maintenance issues and secure them and empty them, and it's a lot of work for a little bit of money. Where if you just work with the investors and get them good deals, they'll buy all day long.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too. You just mentioned they buy all day long. I probably, it's in hundreds of clients I service over the years who were repeat buyers, repeat investors. Of course, I've had thousands of clients, but the ones who are investors, we actually developed a long-term relationship with them. It actually became quite friendly. A lot of these guys became friends of mine because I helped them build a lot of wealth and income by helping them invest and find these great properties. And it wasn't just REOs. Sometimes there were estate sales, all kinds of stuff, people going through divorce, people declaring bankruptcy. It wasn't necessarily all hardship, too. Sometimes there were situations where people simply were transferred. They were transferred out of the area, and sometimes they had to sell the home rather quickly, or the company who hired them was going to take over the house and sell it for them, and we would get a referral from the owner to use us. Have you ever had any experience with any of those other situations I described, like other than the REOs and states and the different ways that you can come up with properties?
I've been doing it so long I can't remember every transaction, but I'm sure that I've had situations like that. I had a situation last year where the broker of our Doylestown office called me and said, "Hey, my brother wants to sell my mother's house, and you need to call him. It's in Philly." So I don't do it. So I went down, talked to him, the house, was going to go for a cheap price. I called up one of my investors the day I listed it. He ran down, took a look at it, made an offer on it. We closed in 30 days transaction, cash as is. It was a great deal for both parties because it wasn't on the market a long time. It was only on the market a day or two. And that way you didn't have problems with break-ins from a vacant house in a neighborhood that's not so nice. And the buyer got a good deal. The buyer got a great deal.
Good. Yeah, everybody wins. And it brings up a valuable lesson, which is you never assume what the other person's going to think or feel or say. You just really don't know until you present something to them. A lot of times people are afraid to make an offer. It might be an offer that includes terms. It's not just cash, for example. There's different terms in there, or if they think it's too low of an offer. But I discovered in the past, if you just simply put it out there, yes, you're going to get some no's, but you never know when you're going to get a yes, and people will negotiate. You just can't assume what they're going to feel, think, or say. Have you experienced the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't decide what you want to pay for the house. You decide that, and then if the seller agrees, then you get the house or the property. But I don't assume what they're willing to pay. And people say, well, what do you think the seller's willing to take? I really don't know. I've doing this so long that I've seen sellers where they fight for every penny, and then I've seen sellers that say, just accept the offer. I just want to be done with this. So you never know what their motivation is. So you just have to present it and see how you negotiate it.
Right. Hey, let me ask you this: Have you ever tried to contact people who are not on the multi-list by using a letter? I know you saw me teach a class out there I think it was late March, and one of my favorite techniques is I'll find people who own certain properties where I know I have demand for them. So say like I have clients looking for 3-unit buildings, and I can find all the owners of 3-unit buildings by using the tax records, and I'll contact them directly with a letter that I created over the years. Have you ever done anything like that too? Just
actually, I actually contacted an owner of a lot that was not for sale. It had been for sale. It was expired, and it was just sitting there. And the buyer called me and said he was interested. He used to quad back there. And I contacted the owner via letter because I had the address from the tax records, but I didn't have a phone number. And he emailed me back, and the buyer didn't buy it, but I ended up listing the property and selling it.
All right. Good. The other thing too about writing letters that are specifically written about specific properties to specific owners is you can use the same format for a number of different situations. You don't have to just use it to find owners of 3-unit buildings, for example. You can use it to contact expires and FSBOs, and if you use the county court records to see who's has a docket with their name on it, whether it's the divorce or foreclosure or bankruptcy or what have you, or even the probate records when people are deceased. That same letter in almost the exact same identical format works in almost all those situations. Have you ever tried to take something that you developed and use it for different purposes, like different types of buyers?
Not so much. I do some farming in the neighborhood where I live, and I get a lot of business. I have about a 60% market share in there. But chasing that type of business, it's difficult. It's easier to just call my sphere or socialize and generate all my leads by socializing at different clubs that I belong to or different places that I frequent. So that's where I get most of my business. Plus, past customers and clients. I'm actually showing a house tonight to a buyer that called me on a rental many years ago and has rented a couple properties from me. And now she's ready to buy, and she liked how I took care of her in the past, so she called me back. And that's basically right. That's basically how I generate my leads.
Yeah, you mentioned something extremely important. That is your sphere. And one of the things I've always taught people is in the very beginning, don't worry about all the different marketing techniques right now. Right now, let's focus on your sphere of the people you know and just simply reach out to them and nurture those relationships, because a lot of your business is going to come from those relationships, and you just never know when and where. So that's why you have to always be in contact with them in one way, shape, or another. Not in a imposing way. You don't want to be a pest to them, but you just want to simply nurture, just be a good friend. Be who you are, being sincere, be genuine, be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so the next day, they could go to work and say, you know what, I just talked to Howard yesterday. I think you should call him. He'll help you. He'll help you buy your first duplex. He's great at that stuff. You just don't know.
Yep. Actually, the first property I ever sold in the real estate business back in 1986 was a duplex, and it was very interesting because they were Israeli diplomats and they were here on diplomatic visas, and we couldn't go with a conventional mortgage. But at the time, FHA did not ask if you were citizens on their application. And I went to a mortgage guy that knew this, and he flipped them to FHA, and we ended up selling them property. I ended up managing it for them, and then getting some rental tenants and making money from that. And then years later, when they sold it, they listed it with me. So it was an interesting situation, but they were repeat customers over and over.
How about that? Your very first horse race, and you struck gold. We not only struck gold once, but you leveraged that one relationship in multiple ways. You helped them first get the property. You leverage it to develop some income on the management side, leasing side, and eventually on the sale. So you got paid at least 3 ways because you leverage your license by working with an investor. And that's one of the key things that people should take away from this interview is it's not just a one and done thing. It's just multiple ways to make money with your license in the world of real estate on any one transaction, but also repeat business. I mean, those guys, who knows, they could have ended up buying 3 or 4 more duplexes from you over the years, if they felt inclined to do so.
Well, it's definitely a relationship business. You build relationships in that way. People, trust you and use you over and over again because of the relationship you built with them.
Exactly. So, well, let me ask you this. I know where you are because I've been there before, but for the people listening to this, and they could be anywhere in the country, U.S. and Canada too, for that matter, what can you tell them about where you are geographically? Because you mentioned Philadelphia. I know you're close there, but you're really out in a suburb or bedroom community, so you've probably got access to a variety of business and types of businesses in the world of real estate. Can you describe a little bit about where you are and how that relates to your business and how you do it?
Well, I'm right on the border of Philadelphia and also New Jersey. We're just over the bridge from Trenton and Ewing and Hamilton Township. I'm also licensed in New Jersey, so I do sell quite a few things up from, I would say, Princeton down to Gloucester County, New Jersey. I also do Bucks County, Montgomery County, Philadelphia. I can do some Chester and some Delaware County as well. I've actually was showing houses at the Jersey Shore this weekend to a friend of mine who's looking to buy a vacation house with a dock. And we were looking in Beach Haven West, which is a nice community where everything's on lagoons. And I think we found him 2 that he likes. He's going to figure out which one he wants to buy. But like I said, I'm licensed in PA and New Jersey, and I don't hesitate. I just sold a house in Pittman, New Jersey. The inspection is Thursday morning. And Pittman is about an hour drive from here, so I don't have a problem driving a long distance to sell property or list property, as long as it's in my multiple listing service.
Plus an hour on the road is not wasted time. Typically, I'm willing to bet that you're using that time wisely, either making phone calls to clients, returning calls, or even listen sometimes books on tape, that type of thing. So usually guys like us are doing that. We're not just driving down the road with our minds wandering aimlessly. I mean, I'm sure we do that from time to time. But do you find yourself using your time on the road productively in and on your business?
Yeah, sometimes. My wife is also a realtor, and like when we go down the shore to show property, she'll go with me for the ride, and she can look up properties on my iPad as we're driving.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. There's another form of leverage.
Yep.
And we discovered over the years, teams, particularly married couples, really do well in this business because you can multitask that way, not just individually, but amongst yourselves, amongst the two of you. You're doing one thing, she's doing another, There's just a certain synergy that occurs there when you do that. But back to the area. So your PA license, you're hanging that with the Langhorne office, and of course you got your Jersey license hanging with another office out there. But when you're conducting business,
we actually have a New Jersey license at the Langhorne office, so I hang both my licenses at the Langhorne office. Yeah.
Gotcha. So now when you're doing business, let's just take an example. Let's say you have a client in Langhorne and he shows an interest in investing. Typically you'll kind of go with what the world gives you. You really don't try to mandate necessarily specific areas to invest. I mean, actually, you should do homework. But what I mean is, would you necessarily say, I think you should stay in Langhorne, or would you open up your client's eyes and say, look, if you branch out a half hour, an hour, we can include Philadelphia, and Philadelphia, in fact, is 46% tenant occupied, which means it's a heck of a rental market. How do you use that that knowledge and information when you're working with clients to not steer them, but make them aware of what's possible and help them be more successful? So if you take that example and work with that a little bit, the guy in Langhorne, for example, who shows an interest in investing, how would you generally inform that person?
Well, it's an interview process. When you talk to them, you find out what their needs are. Do they want to flip something? Do they want to rent something? You have to find out what their needs are, and then you can guide them to where you think that their best investment's going to be. Whether it's a Philly property with duplex or even a row home in Philadelphia. I have one investor that just buys row homes in Philadelphia, and if he finds one for the right price, he'll buy it. And then I have another guy that, he's looking for a deal in the Bucks County area. He'll buy something in Morrisville or Yardley or Langhorne, but he doesn't want to go into Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is kind of tough for the rental market because you need a business privilege license and you need a rental license, and the city, is always in your pocket. So it's got to be a really good investment to buy in Philadelphia.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. The next thing I want to ask is, you've been around since 1986, so you've actually seen one major market turn and, at least three minor turns in the marketplace. Describe a little bit about the last nearly 30 years then, so which means you're probably right now about 39 years old. Is that right? About 39?
Yeah, exactly. I'm 56, but I've seen the market go up and down a million times, but the one thing that remains constant is the investor. The investors buy in good markets and bad markets. In bad markets, they pick up good deals. In good markets, they have to struggle a little bit to find stuff that's good, but they buy whenever. When we had the last downturn, sellers and buyers struggled because values were going down. Buyers didn't want to buy, or they couldn't get more financing. Sellers couldn't sell, therefore they couldn't buy either. But the one thing that remains constant is the investor. He's always looking for a deal, and if you find something that's a deal, they'll buy it. And like I said, because of my relationships with the REO people, I always have access to good buys because I see them come on the market before they come on the market. So, and like I said, my friends give me heads up. I don't want to do the listing of it. Like you said, it's a little bit of a hassle. So I'd just rather work with the investors. But they'll buy in whatever market there is. And like I said, I've seen the market go. When I first got in the real estate business, it was so hot that you couldn't finish banging a sign into the lawn before you had 4 offers, and they were all over asking price. So, that was the type of market it was back in 1986. And then all of a sudden it tailed off, and I saw property values drop, 20%. And, those sellers took a hit. But the market's coming back again, and, we're in an even market, I would say, right now. It's not a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. But, it's pretty much even. So buyers that want to buy and sellers that want to sell will negotiate a contract.
Yeah. I agree 100%. One of the things I recognized in the last downturn is I didn't used to really study data so much. I was so busy, I didn't worry about data and information. I was just out there just literally cranking out transaction after transaction. But what I realized is I started my own brokerage company, and 2000 to get everything lined up. I launched in literally January 2nd of 2009, right in the heart of the downturn. I mean, I was literally riding the wave down, but the reality is my business grew sixfold during those next 3 years. During the heart of the recession, my brokerage company grew 6 years because I focused on the investor relationship. But I learned something very interesting. Statistically speaking, what happens in a recession, at least that recession, is it was the regular residential, the owner-occupied business that dropped dramatically. It wasn't that the investor business picked up. The investor business certainly increased a little bit because a lot of people were getting off the sidelines and jumping in thinking, hey, it's a down market. I'm going to go find a bunch of bargains. But the increase in the investor business was very, very minimal compared to the downturn in the owner-occupied business. So, but people don't look at statistics. What they see is where's all the action. So what I learned is, you know what? Here's the deal. Never turn your back on the investor. Always focus on the investor because it doesn't change. They are buying in the up market. They are buying in the down market. They'll just have different strategies for an up market than they will in a down market. It's the owner-occupied people that if you only focus on that owner-occupied business, you can find yourself in a world of trouble during a recession. I mean, I'm willing to bet, you know, Howard, during the last recession, you probably didn't miss a beat. I mean, you might have had a little drop in business, but quite frankly, I'm willing to bet you cruise right along there in your market center while a lot of other agents were worried about how they're going to get their next commission. Is that a kind of a fair assessment?
Yeah, I did, suffer a little loss of business, but I was still able to make a lot more money than a lot of people that I know. And it was due to a lot of the investors because in that type of a market, there's a lot of foreclosures, there's a lot of short sales, and the investors, they know they're getting a good buy. So, they buy them.
Right.
And a lot of the investors have cash. They don't, you don't have to have cash. You can get a mortgage on an investment property, but some of my investors, they have available cash. They'll just go in and buy cash as is. They're easy deals. They settle in 30 days, and you get paid right away. You don't do it really for the money. You do it because you're helping them earn passive income. If they're renting their properties or if they're flipping, you help them, make more money to buy other properties. Especially the flippers are great because they make a big chunk of change and then they drop it on another house, and they just keep going and going and going.
I do. I love the flippers too because you get paid multiple times. You help them buy the property when they first buy it. Maybe it's a smaller commission, but you're going to get a bigger commission when they go to sell it after they've done remodeling it. Because a flip to me is like a guaranteed sale because the investor has to get their capital back. They're going to sell,
right.
I love this guy. And 30% of the time, statistically, 30% of the time, you'll get the end user buyer, the family who's ultimately going to live there long term. So 30% of the time, you get a third commission off of that one deal.
Yep.
Just amazing. So, well, you mentioned one of the things I want to have you comment on too is. Obviously, you've learned your methodologies over the last nearly 30 years, which is what I did. And one of the things I'm doing lately is going to our market centers and teaching people about the virtues of working with investors, not just because I did it myself and I enjoyed it and made a lot of money, but because we're all being told we're headed into another dip here next year. We just saw the stock market take a 10% correction. And the stock market, of course, is the predictor of the economic predictor 6 months out. That's historically been the story there. So, I mean, if we know that's going to happen, or we believe it's going to happen, what can you tell all the agents after listening to this about investors and perhaps getting some education so that they're prepared, they're not stuck in that vortex of less owner-occupied business, and yet capitalizing on the relationship with investors if they start now. In other words, don't wait till the fire has already started. Get in now before be ahead of the curve. Any comments on that, Howard?
I always tell new agents that investors, you don't make your majority living on them, but they could be the backbone, like the slot machines in a casino are the backbone of the casino. They make them the money. The tables don't make them as much money. They make more in lump sums, but that's the slot machines are what feeds them. If the investors are what feed us. If you
right.
have a handful of investors and you work them and you send them properties, they will buy, and you'll get paid and you'll be able to feed yourself. But if you rely too much on owner-occupants when you have a down market, it's a little tougher.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a mix of both. And with the investors, I think you have to have a mix of flippers and, renters. Because, the rentals, you once you sell it to them, they allow you to rent it and you get a rental commission.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What I did is I enjoyed working with the investors so much more than the owner-occupants. What I would do is I would still maintain the owner-occupied business and do all the marketing, but I would screen them. I would screen them for readiness, willingness, and ability, timing, motivation, and then I would refer them out. So I would at least get a referral, some referral income, but not have to spend all that time on them because I was making more money. My time versus money was a greater, more productive use of my time with investors than it was with the owner-occupants. So I agree. You want to always leverage your license in as many ways as you can and comfortable with, so that you don't have one stream of income. You want to reduce risk by having multiple sources of income by leveraging your real estate license. That's exactly what you've done over the last 30 years. If you don't mind me asking, what would you say would be one of your favorite techniques, like how you actually get investors or how you get the sellers if you do that from time to time? Maybe even going back to the beginning when you first got started. I'll give an example. One of my favorite techniques is having a local community workshop for local investors, not a club where you're charging dues and fees. I didn't ever do any of that kind of stuff. I just created an open forum for people to come to and speak openly, and as a result, they just felt an affinity towards me, and I automatically got all that business, But is there something like that you think, particularly for newer people, like how to help them really get started and jumpstart their investor agent business?
I belong to an organization called the Langhorne Borough Business Association, which is, an organization that helps create business for the borough of Langhorne. And a lot of those guys will come up to me and ask me questions about investing. One of the favorite things that I learned in a continuing education a couple of years ago was that you can use your 401k to invest in real estate. And that doesn't mean taking the money out of the 401k. That means buying the investment property with the 401k or the IRA, if it's a self-managed IRA or 401k. And that really helps build the money that's in the IRA, because instead of getting, 5-6% on, whatever stocks and bonds you have, the real estate market is much more lucrative, and all the rents that you use that come in go right into the 401k and build it very quickly. And a lot of people that have the 401ks are very interested in learning about that.
Yeah, that came up probably, I guess it was maybe close to 10 years or so ago. People started getting turned on to the idea of buying real estate within an IRA. And and I never bought real estate within my own 401k, but I used to have a 401k, and I would borrow from it, buy property, and then pay the 401k back. And when I paid it back, I was paying myself back, of course, with interest. I paid interest to myself. So that, but you're right, there are a lot of 401ks out there now that kind of caught onto the bandwagon when they realized that people were doing it within self-directed IRAs. So it was just a response to market demand. And it's just another way to be creative and help your clients be more successful, because quite frankly, if they're more successful, Howard, you and I are more successful, and all the other agents out there that choose wisely to follow our lead here and take our advice, Well, let me ask you this. You've touched on a couple of really key things here that I really appreciate. I know that people listening to this will also appreciate, and I'm sure your clients will appreciate hearing a little bit about, Howard and who you are and what you do, and hopefully this will help you too. But is there a bigger reason why you're doing what you're doing? Because 30 years is a long time. I mean, you've obviously got some passion for the business. Is there something you can share with people that will help them understand what drives you? What drives Howard to get up every day, get out there and serve these people and help them build wealth and income?
I love my job. I don't think I'll ever retire. I mean, I get up, I go into the office, I do my emails, I find properties for people, I do market analysis. I love going to look at houses. I love the relationships I build. It's a good living, and I can set my own hours. I can do what I want and when I want. I can take off if I want. I can go fishing. I can go golfing, whatever I choose to do, as long as I, get my work done and, create enough income to survive and flourish. But I do love my job, and that's the reason I can get up and go to work every day.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. One last question. We always this is the industry standard when you're doing something like this. It's all about service and how can you give back and help other people. Because I know in the beginning of my career, I did a lot myself, but I also always seemed like there was one guy who was willing to lend a helping hand. So is there one thing you can think of that you would like to share with people who listen to this? And a lot of times it's either newer people or people who are been in the business for a while but just never really found their home in the business. Something you can tell them that will give them like the very next best thing to do, like just one thing. They don't have to be, here's what you do the next year. Here's what you should do tomorrow. Is there something like that you can think of that maybe you discovered yourself that you could share?
Well, when I got into business, the training was, here's a desk, here's a phone, look at you, run your own. And now it's become more of a profession than it was back then. And what I would tell any new agents or any agents that are in the business, the most important thing is to generate leads. Every day you need to spend 2 to 4 hours just generating leads. If you do that, regardless of how you do it, whether you make phone calls to your sphere or call for sale by owners or expired listings, you need to spend that time to generate those leads. You also need to create a business plan and set your goals. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And you need to track your goals. I never did that back in the day. I never really did it until a few years ago when I came to Keller Williams and learned how. And that was a big thing for me. Just discovering that, wow, this is how you make your goals. I thought setting your goals was pick a number and try and make it. But there's actually a business plan to go forward and do that. And Gary Keller wrote a book on it, and it's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And if you follow the model, you'll be successful. You need to, like I said, you need to set your goals in your business plan, and you need to lead generate. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, very, very, absolutely critical and very profound too. It all starts in the beginning, and the beginning is, well, you've got to meet people and develop a relationship. It just starts. That's where it is, because the money comes from a relationship. In order to get a relationship, you've got to actually lead generate to meet people. So very profound. Hopefully, people will pay attention to that and follow your advice. So, in any case, Howard, I really appreciate the fact that you're doing this. It's been a great interview, and don't be surprised if every now and then you're running into somebody who says, hey, I remember hearing you on an interview with Gary Wilson, and I appreciate, when you said this. Maybe it was the last thing you just shared with them. And it really is fulfilling when you get that. So thank you very much, and I extend the thank you for everybody who's going to be listening to this also.
I appreciate your time. Thanks, Gary.
Okay. And Howard, just hang on a moment. I'm going to turn the recording off here, and I'll just give you just a brief instruction here about what's going to follow up next, okay?
Okay.
Okay, hang on one second. And thanks, everybody, for listening to this month's interview, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.